Woman Hollering Creek is the title of one of the stories from Sandra Cisneros' book titled Woman Hollering Creek and Other Stories that was published in 1991. The cultural milieu of this story is very obvious. They tell us really specifically that Cleophilus first lived in Monclova, Coahuila, Mexico, and then in Seguin, Texas. We can figure out that the story begins between 1979 and 1981 because that is when Los Ricos También Lloran, or The Rich Also Cry in English, ran. Look that up, right? This was a telenovela that ran during that time period. And we can tell from what we learned about Cleophilus there at the beginning of the story that she seems to be of lower class, not very educated, traditional Mexican woman. And then her father, Don Serafin, and her husband, Juan Pedro, illustrate the flip sides of machismo. And usually, these days, we think of machismo as being very negative. If somebody is macho, it's like toxic masculinity in English. However, if you go back to the more traditional definition of being macho that people had in the past, it would be much more positive, where we would think of a man who was macho would be take care of his family. He'd be a strong man who could do the work he needed to do. He would be a responsible member of the community, and people would again respect him and feel like he was the kind of man that they would want in a community or to be part of their family. But Juan Pedro, her husband, is what we would really think about as far as being somebody who is macho today. Okay, so we know he's abusive, he's self-centered, he drinks too much, he beats his wife, and very much betrayal of Cleophilus. He brings his girlfriend to their home when his wife there is in the hospital giving birth to their son. The narrative structure of this story is as follows: that we have the point of entry, and we learn quite a bit about Cleophilus. We learn that she has 6 older brothers. Of course, we learn where she lives. She was raised by a father who loves her very much. And then we learn a little bit about her life there in the small town. She has a friend named Chela. They both love watching the telenovelas like Tu o Nadie, You or No One, and then Los Ricos También Lloran. And based on the romantic storylines of the soap operas, she has been waiting all her life for passion. Right? And she thinks she has found it with Juan Pedro. So obviously, Cleophilus is a very naive, innocent young woman. She believes in the fairy tales of these telenovelas where she can meet this Prince Charming and be swept off her feet and be taken away somewhere where she's going to live a life of luxury. And even if she is unhappy for a time, it's all going to work out. It's going to work out in the end for her to have a happy life. And she looks forward to that because her life there in Monclova is rather dull and repetitious. There's nothing very exciting to do, as we find out. Right, that's only she can go to the movies once a week, or she can go to get a milkshake with her friend. But nothing very exciting. Again, so they want to be like these female characters they see in the telenovelas, such as Lucia Mendez and others, right? Look at the way they wear their hair, the way they wear their makeup, the way they dress. All of those things seem to be very desirable. And then we have the inciting moment. So the inciting moment is when Cleophilus marries Juan Pedro and then moves away from Mexico to Texas with him without knowing much about him. But it seems to be that she thinks that he has money, right? And the only thing that she bases that on is the fact that he drives a new pickup. Of course, he has to pay monthly payments on it, which takes most of his money, as we find out later in the story. But right, she thinks that she will live in a nice house, wear beautiful clothes, like the telenovela characters. Again, she even thinks that the sound of the new town they're going to live in, Seguin, sounds like money, right? Has a tinkle of money to it. So she doesn't know what living in another place would really be like. The crisis in this story is, she suffers abuse, right, from almost the first moment that she gets married to Juan Pedro and moves to Seguin. But when he throws a book across the room and hits her in the cheek with that book that she really loved, because now that she lives in the U.S. and she doesn't have a television set, she can't watch the telenovelas. She could only read these romance novels by Corinne Tellado. So that, again, seems to be a big betrayal. What is she going to do if he'll hit her there with her own book? It's not going to stop, right? She knows she's pregnant with their second child, and she is desperate to do something. So the climax is when, after she manages to talk Juan Pedro into letting her go to the doctors for an exam, and she tells either the nurse or the doctor, it's a little bit hard to tell whether Graciela is a nurse or a doctor there, but the person she finds there at the clinic calls her friend to help Cleophilus, give her a ride to the bus station in San Antonio so that she can get away from Juan Pedro. Right? And so then, right, there is our climax. When she gets in that car, it's a pickup. Gets in a pickup to be able to get away from her abusive husband. And the denouement, or the resolution, is what Cleophilus learns about Felice when she takes that ride with her. So, very different from Cleophilus, Felice is that strong, independent woman who, not only owns her own vehicle, but it is a pickup because she thinks that's a tougher car. And then when they cross the bridge that spans Woman Hollering Creek, when she hollers while crossing the bridge, she is expressing her strength like Tarzan, right? Not weakness, right? Whether she's not suffering from pain or anger. Right? So it gives Cleophilus a whole new way of looking at what a woman can do, how she can live her life, as opposed to what she was brought up to in her background, and again, having the wrong ideas from the telenovelas. The narrative point of view in this story is third person limited. Right? We don't know what everyone thinks. We do know some of what Cleophilus thinks. We learn about, again, their situation and what goes on from that third person perspective. But we feel the most sympathy for Cleophilus because we know the most about her. We don't really understand Juan Pedro. We don't understand why he acts the way he does, except the fact that he fulfills this stereotypical male role that we would think of for someone who wants to, again, act out this machismo in negative ways.